What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing a MonsterVerse discussion video. So while I was working on MonsterVerse May, which was a big project I undertook back in May of 2024, in which I reviewed every single entry of the MonsterVerse in chronological order, I started to see a lot of patterns emerging in the MonsterVerse that became really grating over time. And I would just like to say that while I'm trying to put a more positive foot forward, and I'm trying to be less critical and just have more fun with things, I still feel very strongly about all this material about the MonsterVerse. I feel very strongly about a lot of these problems. If you don't want to hear any critiques of the MonsterVerse, if you're a fan and you think it's like an all-time perfect series with absolutely no flaws, this video is probably not for you. If you're someone who's interested to engage in the MonsterVerse and engage in some of the problems and the storytelling they have in order to see ways to work forward through that, this video probably is for you. But I will also say this video was recorded a long time ago in the midst of MonsterVerse May, and so a lot of these things were really fresh for me, especially because New Empire was a pretty new movie. It had only been out for a couple weeks, so a lot of these issues were really fresh for me, and so I was very passionate about a lot of them. So I'm gonna be kind of heated in this video because there's a lot of change that I think needs to come to the MonsterVerse, and I am hopeful that we are moving forward and doing a lot of these things based on comments made by the new movie's director and interesting things we've been hearing about the next MonsterVerse film. So I am hopeful that a lot of these things are addressed, but this is still important, I think, to acknowledge. Also, I might pop in every now and then to give updated thoughts on things. What's up everybody, D-Man back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today we're going to be doing another Godzilla x Kong the New Empire discussion video. I love the MonsterVerse just as much, if not more, than the next guy. I don't blindly love these things without acknowledging that there are faults with every single MonsterVerse entry. Even my absolute favorites, I acknowledge that there are faults with some of these things. And in this video, I'm going to be talking about something that didn't start out as an issue, but has over time become a pretty big issue for the MonsterVerse. And that's just the idea that the MonsterVerse kind of cannibalizes itself all of the time. I really think the MonsterVerse needs to change. I really think that we do have a pretty big issue with these things, and that's just how freaking repetitive they can be. Now you might be like, what are you talking about? King of the Monsters was so wildly different than Godzilla x Kong, which is so different than Monarch Legacy of Monsters. Monarch Legacy of Monsters I actually think did the most different and was the freshest entry in the MonsterVerse. Regardless of if you like it, I do think it was the freshest from a conceptual standpoint, whereas GXK might be loud and bombastic, and so much is happening in that movie that you might think, wow, it's so different. Story-wise, beat-wise, it isn't different in the ways that it needs to be. I don't think this is killing a single one of these stories individually. It just makes it so that if you're like me, where you rewatch these movies all the time, it kind of becomes a slog that they do the same thing over and over again. So I'll just get into it here. The MonsterVerse has repetitive stories. Godzilla films used to be so different from film to film. The human plots, the style, the genre, everything changed. You know, you had Ebra Horror of the Deep, which was like a heist movie in a way. It was like an island adventure film. It is so radically different than Destroy All Monsters, a pure sci-fi film. Talking about sci-fi on sci-fi, Invasion of Astro Monster and Destroy All Monsters aren't even the same. One of them you're going to the moon, you're fighting aliens. The other one you're going to a different planet where Godzilla's battling Ghidorah. The movies were different. Mothra versus Godzilla was a much smaller scaled human story, and then you had like King Kong versus Godzilla, which was a satire, and it was like this big adventure comedy. These films used to be comfortable telling different types of stories, and now in the MonsterVerse they basically tell the same story over and over again, just with a different coding on each time. The MonsterVerse also has an over-reliance on some smaller things. This is going to be some really quick nitpicks, but like sometimes it feels like the filmmakers are just steal from one another. King of the Monsters uses the 2014 Godzilla charge up. It parallels it very similar. It's a cute throwback to the 2014 film, even though that was the film that came immediately before it. But it was okay because it was only done the one time, and then there was also the ending where they parallel the Kiss of Death, and it was like, okay, well, we could have probably come up with a more interesting finisher for Ghidorah than that. Then Godzilla pulls out the same move in every single movie. He just does the stomp chest move on every single monster he comes in contact with. He does it in G14, King of the Monsters, Godzilla vs. Kong, and Godzilla x Kong, and it's kind of cool that Godzilla's developing a fighting style of his own. But then when they do things like in GXK, ripping off the Kiss of Death twice, literally back to back, it just feels really redundant. Godzilla has now Kiss of Death like 4 of his MonsterVerse enemies. It's just a little too much. Also, Godzilla x Kong basically pulls Kong Skull Island's entire second act with the man-eating tree, the the adventure through the forest.
We're really not gonna talk about it. You know, this is not normal, right? Stuff like that doesn't just happen.
He was just eaten by a tree. One minute he was there, he was right in my face, and then a tree out of nowhere.
No, wait a minute. Is nobody gonna say anything about the...
He's gone. But he was eaten by a tree. I don't want to die like that.
Going to the Iwi temple.
Come on, then.
Stay back. Whoa! Guys!
Stop!
Oh my God!
It's going away.
Oh my God.
It's going away.
Nobody shoot. Nobody shoot.
Whoa. Everybody keep your wigs on now.
There we go.
Learning about the backstory and exposition intercutting with Kong doing a big fight. A lot of the beats are pulled straight from Kong Skull Island, even down to the way that Kong fights that big snake and eats it the exact same way he does with the squid in Kong Skull Island, literally copying shot for shot some of those moments. And then Godzilla x Kong kind of mirrors Godzilla vs. Kong's ending, with Godzilla and Kong doing a big fight and then teaming up to take down the bad guy. It's just like sometimes we're doing the same thing too much, and this is where it really gets to be an issue. Things like cave painting. Godzilla 2014 opens up with cave painting, showing actual mythical creatures. It sets the stage for what's to come, builds the mythology of the MonsterVerse. It's pretty cool. Kong Skull Island is really what kicks off the trend by introducing us to the post-credit scene with Godzilla, Rodan, Mothra, Ghidorah, and then a Godzilla vs. King Ghidorah cave painting. And that was pretty exciting. It was a cool way to introduce the idea of King of the Monsters, to tease it without showing the monsters themselves. Then in Godzilla King of the Monsters, for some reason, because the big Toho 4 all got cave paintings in Kong Skull Island, now we double down on it by giving cave paintings to like half of the Titans in the movie. And it's neat that these things have existed for so long that there's like a record of them. But then when the movie ends with the exact same beat of Kong Skull Island rehashing the cave painting thing, setting up Godzilla versus Kong, it was too much the same. Godzilla x Kong the New Empire has the Iwi art telling all of the stories of the past and now future battles with the Titans in the story, and it just so happens to be all of the Titans that are important right now, right this second. It's the exact exposition we need to understand what's going on for this story. It was just overly convenient. The birth of Kong builds off the Iwi artwork seen in Kong Skull Island, and then we see loads of Iwi paintings that tell the history of Skull Island. Godzilla Aftershock has cave paintings telling the story of Dagon versus Muto Prime. Godzilla Dominion has Godzilla discovering a cave painting of a species at war. Kingdom Kong, Kong discovers a cave painting of Godzilla versus Kong, and then in Godzilla x Kong the Hunted, they do the exact same beat, with Kong discovering at the end of the comic a series of cave paintings that show different battles with different Titans, including Godzilla versus Shimo. Like, of course, Kong's always gonna apparently discover the next Titan in line. He figures out Shimo right before Shimo shows up. That's just convenient, isn't it? I just don't get the over-reliance on the cave paintings, and that's not the only thing the MonsterVerse is overly reliant on. The MonsterVerse has one of two stories. The MonsterVerse either tells a Parasite story or it tells an old rivals story, and that's not mutually exclusive either. When Godzilla Awakening was still considered canon, we had Shinomura, a parasite that was ancient enemies with Godzilla. It awakens and starts to cause havoc, bringing Godzilla out of hibernation to stop it before it can reproduce and overpopulate the planet. Well, now in Godzilla 2014 we meet the Mutos, two parasites that their species was Godzilla's natural parasitic rival. They awaken and start to cause havoc, bringing Godzilla out of retirement to stop them before they can reproduce and overpopulate the planet. Kong Skull Island is a very different movie, but it does borrow this core idea with the Skullcrawlers, an invasive race of near parasitic creatures that awaken and overpopulate, throwing off the balance of nature on Skull Island, leading to King Kong having to step up to shut them down. Then we get into the whole old rivals thing, and ancient rivals, old rivals, that is something that us fans have been complaining about since King of the Monsters. We thought it was overdone. Shinomura was one of Godzilla's oldest rivals, and he was forced to fight Shinomura for over 250 million years, according to Godzilla Awakening. Then we get the Mutos, which are something of old rivals for Godzilla just because their species is specifically responsible for his species nearly going extinct. The Skull Devil was responsible for killing Kong's parents, and so in a way it's Kong's old rival as a result. While the rivalry is less old than being, I don't know, hundreds or thousands of years old, there is a decades-old rivalry between Kong and the Kraken, as the Kraken was responsible for killing Kong's native village friends, and has been challenging him for dominance of the island for over 20 years. By the end of this, you'll see that of the MonsterVerse films, there is not one single one where the big bad winds up not being an old rival of our heroic titan, and in the expanded material there are also very few instances where that's the case. Muto Prime is actually Godzilla's specific old rival because she killed Dagon and many other members of Godzilla's species. Muto Prime's also old enough to have gone toe-to-toe with Godzilla back in the day. Then we have Ghidorah, Godzilla's old rival and enemy who fell from the stars, challenging him for the title of King of the Monsters.
Ghidorah and Godzilla's rivalry was ancient and unique.
Then we also have The Rival, literally its name is The Rival, which predates the Great Godzilla-Kong War, and The Rival was a supremely powerful great ape who was able to defeat Godzilla and take control of his original Hollow Earth temple, sending him packing. King Kong is apparently Godzilla's ancient rival just because Godzilla was at war with Kong's ancestors, and so there is a race war there. Godzilla's a bit of a racist, that is true. Godzilla fought Kongs for hundreds or thousands of years, leading to a deep hatred for King Kong specifically because he's the last one standing who's willing to stand up to Godzilla. Now in Godzilla x Kong, as if that wasn't enough, we're introduced to Scar King, Godzilla's old rival, of fucking course he is, and Godzilla was the lone warrior who fought against Scar King in an army of apes. Godzilla and Scar King go way back, of course they do, like there's totally a history between these two characters, and Godzilla is the reason Scar King is left in Hollow Earth. I would say that Godzilla x Kong the New Empire is downright horrible at presenting this history. It is all verbal exposition given to us by Eileen Andrews. It's all show, no tell. Scar King has no proper acknowledgement of Godzilla, and he is far more interested in menacing Kong. Now, some Godzilla fans will overly read into one single expression Scar King has when Godzilla boom tubes his way down from the surface world to Hollow Earth, and Scar King kind of goes, ugh. Scar King's reacting to the fact that a monster just spawned in front of him. He's not reacting to Godzilla's roar as if it's like, uh-oh, it's the guy who put me here. This is my ancient enemy. There's no proper history between these two characters. It's not well developed at all, and you can read into it all day long on Twitter. The movie doesn't present it well. Now, I also know that Alan Henry, who mocaps Kong and Scar King New Empire, said Scar King was suffering from PTSD when he heard Godzilla come down into Hollow Earth. That's great that the actor feels that way. I do not think that is conveyed on screen. I think that there needed to be a lot more build up to it and a lot more substance to that. It feels like a hollow statement. Scar King spends the entire fight going for Kong. When he's on the surface, he's cocky. I know Alan Henry said that Scar King gets erratic in the final fight. He acts no differently during the final fight in Rio than he acted when Kong showed up in his kingdom. It's a very hollow statement because the movie did not develop that well. It truly is not well done in the film itself. Well, as if that wasn't enough, we have Shimo, Godzilla's ancient rival and previous Alpha Titan who Godzilla had to challenge in order to claim the title of King of the Monsters originally. Isn't that just fantastic? Godzilla has history with every single monster he comes in contact with, it feels like. You know why I love Godzilla fighting the Ion Dragon and Godzilla fighting Scylla? Because there's no ancient history there. It's just Godzilla encountering a new monster. Mechagodzilla almost works, almost managing to escape this, as Mechagodzilla was built by Simmons following the events of 2014. Mechagodzilla is obviously a brand new mechanized titan that Godzilla has never encountered before, which is why Godzilla is thoroughly unequipped for Mechagodzilla's fight and gets completely annihilated, making it really entertaining to see Godzilla have to persevere through this battle. However, we do not escape the trope, as the only reason Mechagodzilla goes on the rampage he goes on is because he's partially infused with King Ghidorah's soul, meaning Mechagodzilla is just a reincarnation of Godzilla's old rival King Ghidorah. And the trope of a wealthy man who gets wronged by the events of Godzilla 2014 building a mechanized titan in order to fight the titans is reused in Godzilla Kong the Hunted, just one entry in the MonsterVerse later. Good stuff. And as if that wasn't enough, we also have the Titan Wars. The Titan Wars detail the overly convoluted history of the MonsterVerse, and also for some reason we bring them up in every entry post Godzilla King of the Monsters. So the old human civilization coexisted with titans in peace for a long time. They lived next to peaceful titans which would guard them from aggressive ones. This is all detailed in Godzilla King of the Monsters. This changes when the humans started to get power hungry, creating horns that basically were like the Orca, where they could weaponize titans against each other, sending the titans into war with one another. This was the original Titan War that led to the downfall of all of the ancient civilizations like the one that built the temple from Godzilla King of the Monsters. This was supposed to represent how history shows again and again how nature points out the folly of man, in that the Orca was essentially the modern version of those horns and history was repeating itself. Well, in the wake of this, a power balance was left open in the Titan world, and it led to the Godzilla species going to war with the great apes. Or should I say, the species that Godzilla is a part of, because now Legendary is no longer allowed to refer to the other Godzilla creatures as Godzillas. They have to be referred to as Godzilla-like creatures because Legendary is going to get in trouble by Toho Toho for making Godzilla no longer just a guy and a species now. Toho's okay with there being more than one Godzilla, they would just prefer if they were called different things, like how we had Dagon and Godzilla. Well, in the past, the Godzillas and the Kongs went to war with each other, battling for dominance. That's where the Kongs were able to scrape the Godzillas down to nothing and create weapons from their bodies. Although now they're no longer referred to as Godzillas or Kongs, they're referred to as the Godzilla-like species and, of course, the great apes. Of course, this was prophesized to resume in the modern day, where we saw cave paintings and we heard rumblings that maybe those old rivalries will kick up again in the modern day. Now we arrive at Scar King. Somewhere in the mix, Scar King led a rebellious army of great apes to the surface world in an attempt to wage war on it and claim it as his own. Godzilla was the only one to stand in his way, leading to a fierce battle and a ancient war with Godzilla and Scar King, in which Godzilla wasn't able to defeat Scar King, but was able to trap him in Hollow Earth, unable to kill his army. Also, Ghidorah showed up way back in the past, waging war on the planet, and Godzilla had an ancient war with Ghidorah. Now, the MonsterVerse loves to retcon things, so Shima was somehow sort of involved in that fight as well. Isn't that wonderful? That gets into another thing the MonsterVerse has no reliance on, which is prophecies. The Birth of Kong has a prophecy that Rico can see the entire past of Skull Island, and then because of his prophecies, he realizes that Kong's either the savior of humanity or humanity isn't worthy of his saving, and that kicks off the entire arc of that comic. Godzilla vs. Ghidorah, there was an ancient prophecy about the two of them fighting again in the modern day. Godzilla vs. Kong had an ancient prophecy saying that they would again resume war in the modern day. Kong and Camazotz had an ancient prophecy created by the Iwis, who could see the future apparently, which is something that they apparently do in all of these movies now. They could see the future and realize that Kong and Camazotz were going to do a big fight. Godzilla and Mothra vs. Scar King was a prophecy, although they didn't even bring up Kong in that. Mothra was apparently prophesized to be revived by an Iwi from Skull Island, who also needed to be deaf, so just so happens to be Gia specifically. Like, as if it wasn't bad enough she comes from Skull Island, in the novelization it specifies that she had to be deaf as well, so that she could sense Mothra's vibrations or whatever. The Godzilla x Kong prophecy isn't even a fun prophecy. It's clearly trying to throw back to Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, a film which had a prophecy in the Toho films, but that one was actually fun. We got to see it unraveled over the course of the movie. This one is just a pure exposition dump of things that are either happening right this very second as Kong's fighting Scar King, or are about to happen in 1 second when Gia revives Mothra. It's just too on the nose, it's too specific, and it takes all of the fun out of the movie, in my opinion. Hey there, I am back with yet another outfit change. Let me try and quickly explain why the Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla prophecy works, and why I don't think the GXK one does. First of all, with GXK, we are told that Godzilla has already defeated Scar King and his army in the past before without help, and now we're being told he's gonna have help from Kong and Mothra, completely deflating the stakes right before they're about to happen. In fact, as we learn that Godzilla was able to defeat Scar King and his entire army by himself is right before Kong goes in to fight Scar King one-on-one. Kong was able to go toe-to-toe with Godzilla and was able to beat him in round 2 in Hong Kong. Meaning that if Kong was able to go toe-to-toe with Godzilla and Scar King and his entire army were not, there's not as much need for us to worry about Kong. Dude's pretty much got this. And as we see in the movie, Kong does sort of lose the fight, but also just kind of barely. And without Shimo, he probably would have been able to take Scar King. But just the entire thing comes out of nowhere. The whole Mothra plot is completely forced into the movie. It doesn't have any lore or history behind it that connects to the previous movies, and especially connects to Mothra from the previous film. Things just kind of happen because they do, and they don't bother to explain why they happen. In Godzilla vs. Mechagodzilla, we are given a very simple prophecy and told a couple things about it. Number one, we're told that the heroes are aware of it, and we're told that the villains are aware of it, and we spend the entire movie trying to see if that prophecy is going to come true. The villains are actively doing every single thing they can to make sure that the prophecy does not come true, whereas the heroes are trying to do everything they can to make the prophecy come true. Everybody takes an active part in making things happen, and that's why it's all the more rewarding to see it unfold. It also unfolds over the course of the entire movie as the prophecy is established really early on, and it takes the full film to watch it unfold. Godzilla Kong the New Empire introduces the prophecy by the middle of the second act, and by the start of the third act, the prophecy has already come true, and there is nobody taking an active part in anything. Gia takes a passive part in it, sticking her hands into the air and doing jazz hands until Mothra appears, and then that's it. It's done. The prophecy's fulfilled. It's just not the same. I would argue that that scene where they exposition dump the prophecy in GXK is actually the worst maybe writing in the entire MonsterVerse. So how do we fix this? Well, it's very simple. Things just need to change. It's actually a really easy thing. We need change. The world needs it. We need new stories, new plot lines, new ideas. And this is where human characters can be really important, because you can tell all sorts of different human stories with these characters that can do different things, like what we saw in the original Showa continuity. The Showa series is so different from entry to entry because of those human stories, not because of the kaiju stories, and that's what the MonsterVerse is really missing. Also, we need less reused moments being repeated. I don't want to see another Godzilla 2014 Atomic Breath build up. I don't want to see another Godzilla Kiss of Death. I want to see new stuff. Push push new ideas forward. I like that Godzilla has a specific moveset that he uses, it's cool, but maybe the next time he tries the Kiss of Death it doesn't work and so then he stops doing it. Also, we need titans Godzilla and Kong have no history with, just titans that they show up and fight in this movie, like Godzilla versus Scylla. There didn't need to be an ancient prophecy about that or thousands of years of history for it. Godzilla fought Scylla because Scylla was causing problems. That's good enough. I just realized that because of the comics having Godzilla fight both Tiamat and Scylla, the Ion Dragon is the only time we get to see Godzilla in live action in the MonsterVerse fight a titan he does not have history with. Other than that, in the MonsterVerse live action installments, Godzilla has either fought a member of this titan species giving him history with it, or he's fought this literal titan giving him history with it before. What the hell? We need titans that aren't prophesized, and we don't have tons of cave paintings and data on. Just new titans that pop up and's like, whoa, what is this thing? Oh, you don't even know what that thing is. Kaiju that are unprecedented, created in the moment, or just becoming threats. That's why Mechagodzilla is so awesome. Mechagodzilla just shows up and it's like, whoa, what is that thing? How do we stop it? You could have Gigan be created out of the remains of a Muto or something. You could have Destroya be birthed. You could create Biolante, or you could just have a new monster pop up from Axis Mundi that we haven't met yet. Something like that. Monsters that we don't need a ton of history for an exposition to understand. New stories, new ideas, please. The MonsterVerse can't keep telling the same two stories over and over again. I'm sick of the Parasites and I'm sick of the ancient rivals. Do something different, please. There's a lot of other issues with the MonsterVerse. I have particular issues with the extended canon, the alpha concept, the novelizations, even just the marketing of certain things like Kong's survival instinct in the Skull Island anime as absolute hard canon. I really have issues with a lot of that stuff, and there's so much more I could get into, but again, I don't want to be overly negative, and I do want to move forward from these negative topics, as I've been trying to do in my current videos. But I still felt like this was an important one to release. So there's all that. I love the MonsterVerse films. I love them so much, and I would love to keep loving them. So in order for that to happen, they got to start doing new things with their plot. Because while these films do new things stylistically or with their action set pieces, they're not doing different things with their plot. And that's my big issue. Thank you guys all for watching. I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. If you want to check out the Patreon, you can use the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time for the next one. D-Man out.